Okay, so let's just take up from where we left off. There's technical jargon, and technical jargon, but the upshot is we start off with a matroid with this connectivity, which is what we get from an excluded minor, and it turns out we get something that's relatively close to that connectivity, a slightly annoying departure, but not too bad, and we can find an arbitrarily large, assuming our matroid is very, very, very large, then we can find a large set of elements and up to duality, we've got the property that for all subsets of this large set of elements, we can delete any subset we like and keep some nice type of connectivity. So how do we prove a theorem like this? This theorem is just, it's in some sense normal mathematics, where my definition of normal mathematics is it doesn't use any of the results from the Matroid minus project. And we need a theorem of, this is Gillen, Gerards, Tony Kuhn and Stefan. But first we need to know about spikes in matroids. Now, I think just about everyone's familiar with spikes. If you're not familiar with spikes, just switch off.
You're a lucky person.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, the spikes are just these famously annoying matroids, right? And they just somehow have to be dealt with from time to time. They're not going to be matroids. We don't care about spikes as matroids. We care about spikes as three separating sets. So if I give you a matroid, and I give you a three separation in a matroid, and I see what I see on one side is a spike-like object, a spike which has got a partition into pairs, such that the union of every pair is three separating, blah, blah, blah. But then what's on the other side will be this huge, vast matroid. So we can think about this spiky stuff. As James was talking about, what were the things?
Prickly.
We couldn't call them spiky. Prickly, you know, so we can think of these as unpleasant sort of three separating things that are annoying for us. So why are they annoying for us? Because we have this amazing, lovely theorem of the above four authors, which says that if you give me a matroid that's FK connected with some hypotheses, in particular, if E is the size of the set is very large, and I give you, it's FK connected, so I'm giving you a set with low connectivity, then that's a set I've got, that set's precious for some reason. I'm saving up, I don't want to remove anything in that set, but I can always find something in the complement to delete or contract to keep FK connectivity, or I've got spikes kicking around. And I mean, that's less than or equal to B, isn't it? Less than or equal to B. So the whole thing is that there are these spike-like things, and so every time you want to remove something to keep FK connectivity, you can't because it's in a spike. Now, why can't you? Because it's in a spike. Because if you contract something, it puts something into the tip, and that tip can go into an unpleasant place, and it can add one to the separators. I'm just saying this if you've ever thought about trying to prove this sort of stuff. So it's annoying. And if you delete something from spike, oh, it's got a code tip, and that code tip goes into the blah, 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 and it's a pain. But in any case, so that's the theorem. So that's starting to tell you that apart from the issue of spike, like these spike three separators, you can find, in a sufficiently large FK connected matroid, there exists a function, right? So it's, you know, again, this function, we're not saying what this function is, but it's... Now the other thing is that spikes are not so bad. So at this stage in the paper, you've got a proof of bunch of lemmas about spike-like three separators, which are very similar to well-known lemmas about spikes or spike-like flowers in other situations, but subtly just, so it's all very standard stuff. But the nice thing is if I give you a FK connected matroid and I give you a leg of spike, which is one of the pairs, then I might get into trouble. I might not be able to contract or delete one of the elements, but if I do a deletion contraction remove, I recover FK connected. So are spikes bad? Well, no, I can't do a single thing, but hey, I can do the deletion contraction. So so what that is saying, I've just lost the plot a bit because I've forgotten exactly how I've organised this slide now. But what that lemma says is if you give me your really, really large FK connected matroid, there's a question about this tower independence, right? So that But what that lemma says, if you give me a really, really large F connected matroid or FK connected matroid, where K is very large, so you've got to sort of shift a bit between the two. But I can keep applying that lemma. I'll either get into trouble by hitting a spike, and I can keep finding an element to remove to keep FK connected, or else I'll get into trouble by hitting a spike. But if I hit a spike, I can do a deletion contraction move. So it's not unreasonable to sort of believe that you can find a large set to remove to keep FK connectivity. Oh, but I want a large tau independent set to remove. I want a large set that's independent in the tangle. So that adds technicalities to what would seem a very straightforward result, that you want to keep this independence in the tangle. Now, one reason why it's absolutely important to keep independence in the tangle is that I couldn't prove this lemma. So now I've found a whole bunch of elements to remove from my matroid, and I keep this FK connectivity. But what I want to do is I want to find a large set to remove to keep this connectivity, a particular connectivity where I remove arbitrary subsets of it. And that's not the property that I have at the moment. So what this says is, if you give me a tangle in a matroid M, and you tell me I've got a set C union D, so C and D are obviously disjoint, and it's a tau independent set, so it's independent in the tangle. And I'm not saying anything about the connectivity of M, by the way. And if I do that, and I tell you that M, when I contract C and delete D, I get an FK connected matroid, and then here's an actual number, 16. I'm very proud of that number because, and then if the tangle has very high order, and I'm allowed to dualize, then there is a subset of size n that has this property, the property that I want. So that first theorem I said comes out as sort of that, I'm doing this in a few slides, and there's about 4 or 5 pages in the paper to handle the technicalities. But the crucial thing I want to say is that if I didn't have independence in the tangle there'd be no way I could prove this lemma. Because it's being independent in the tangle is the absolute crucial property that I need. And so I'll say, so you can prove lemmas like this if you do things tangle theoretically, and if you're not prepared to go there with tangles, forget about it. That's the I'm proselytizing, I'll start coming around and try to sell you, sort of Seventh-day Adventist type stuff. No. Yeah.
Do we have a feeling for the order of the tangle compared to the other parameters like M?
Yeah, if you look at the order of the tangle, it has to be, obviously it has to be bigger than N.
Yeah.
And the order of the tangle is not huge.
Right.
But you
so it's at least 6 N, right? Because C and D.
Yeah, and then these other parameters appear
Yeah.
in it, and they appear in it for strange reasons when you do the proof. And the first time I proved this, I didn't think that I needed to care about the order of the tangle. But then you've got the thing about things, you have to be guaranteed that things are small. And by the way, there's issues too here because, and I'm slipping over all of this, you've got to have a bunch of theorems about when you start off with a tangle in a matroid, right? As soon as I delete an element, well, the tangle's gone bye-byes. Because the tangle, I've changed the ground set, so I've changed and the tangle matroid, blah, blah, blah. So what you have to do is you have theorems about, if you've got a tangle of order n and you take certain sorts of minors, then you get associated tangles in the minors, which, I use the word induced I use the word induced in about 20 different meanings for various ways, because if you operate on the matroid in a various way, the tangle will lose some of its order. So here I've removed a bunch of stuff. This tangle is in the original matroid. When I've removed it, now I'm in this minor that's got and then now I've got to say I've got this lower order tangle. The order of that tangle in the minor's got to be sufficiently high for me to say stuff. So that forces, I've eroded some order, so that forces me to make, there's stuff like that going on. Genuinely not difficult, and genuinely not the stuff you want to be thinking about in a talk like this, which you have to handle. Okay, so with those ingredients, the proof of that original connectivity results. All right, so what's that ingredient? We can find lots of elements to remove and keep a reasonable connectivity. That's all I've got. That's where I've got to so far. Now, what we need to know is the same old problem, and if you've ever tried to understand the proof of the standard known results for excluded minors, you have this problem that you need to know at a certain time that if you give me a representation of a minor and I add an element, I need a certificate for saying that there's only one way that I can extend that representation. And we call that problem is the problem of bifurcation of representations. And historically, a way to certify that you won't have this problem of bifurcation of representations is by this notion of elements being fixed. Now again, you either know what this means or you don't, and if you don't, just understand that being a fixed element is a certificate that you don't have the problem of bifurcation of representations. Right? That's all you need to know. And if you know about fixed elements in clones, you know about that wonderful world that's there's significant literature on. All right, and this is the crucial thing. And then we just need to know another theorem that's been kind of given to us. You can see Jim's motivation for collaborating with various people on various projects. Oh look, yet again, how useful it is to have the tangled terminology. We cannot bound the number of, so what we want is non-fixed elements are problematic, right? Because they're the ones that can lead to bifurcation of representation. Fixed elements are good. So what do we want to do? We want to bound the number of non-fixed elements. We can't, right? We can have arbitrarily large number of non-fixed elements in highly connected matroids. So what are we going to do? We can bound the rank of the non-fixed elements in the tangle. So that's exactly the type of thing that I was saying before, relative to other things. So that says the set of non-fixed elements has bounded rank, the tangle. So that's the theorem. That's a nice theorem of Jim's and Stefan's, and that we can just essentially apply that. Oh, can we? No. Oh dear, how sad. We could apply it if our matrix is 3 connected. I mean, we've got 3 connected F representative, we've got F connected, we've got this. The matrix we'll be looking at when we start to have to worry about this will be these strongly F Whittle K connected, and being strongly F Whittle K connected certainly induces a nice tangle for us, but it's not 3 connected, so there's some slight, in fact, there's some slight modification of that theorem that you have to make, and you can get series classes of size up to 3 in these things, and elements of series classes are not fixed. So I'll just say this very quickly because it's an easy fix. This is just an easy thing to deal with. If I give you an element of a series class, it's not fixed. It's easy to see that element you won't be fixed. But what I can do is I can just say, oh, but if I co-simplify that series class to a point, would that point be fixed? I mean, a series class is just a pointer to a point down there, right? Would that point be fixed? And if that point is fixed, I will say the members of that series class are weakly fixed. And so that's just a way that you can modify Jim and Stefan's theorem to make it work for this notion. And so this is just very easy, but I know you just do need to upgrade this in the slide. What is the other thing that you will have come across if you've tried to understand the standard proofs of that? You'll have come across the famous problem of inequivalent representations. Right? And again, F connectivity is very, very strong. And so F connectivity is strong enough and to actually control inequivalent representations. And notice that there's no requirement on F here other than F of naught is equal to naught, F of 1 equals 1, which is 3 connectivity. If you give me an F connected, 3 connected matroid, and so this is the 4 authors before, if you give me, then you've got a bounded number of inequivalent F representations. So that just says if you go, like if you've got some function F that you can really, and it's an interesting thing too, because I've been talking about the fluid mechanical level way up here and the molecular level, is that F could be whatever it likes, but you need these 2 requirements here at the molecular level. This is stopping you having those triangle triads, which is exactly the same problem that you had if you go back to the original paper of Kahn's on inequivalent representations of matroids over Geoff. It's exactly the same issue that leads to inequivalent representations of matroids over Geoff that Dylan alluded to before. And it's curious that in a way, if you've got F connectivity, all you have to do is get past that problem at the molecular level, and then everything is fine, which is sort of quite an awesome thing. And so this result here, again, we don't have that, but you can extend that theorem to the strong Whittle connector. And what else have we got? So we've controlled we've got the non-fixed elements under control. We've got the ability to remove lots of elements to keep our connectivity arbitrarily. We've controlled inequivalent representations, and now what we go back to the original proofs, and the original proofs say, oh look here, if you give me my excluded minor, I find a pair of elements to delete, and what I get is, if you haven't seen the original, for some of you, you know, I'm just reciting a famous incantation. You get two matroids, M1 and M2, such that M1 delete A is equal to M2 delete A, M1 delete B is equal to M2 delete B. They're both representable, and then you get a little bad subdivision that certifies that difference, and that gives you a contradiction. So what you got is two matroids very close together that are representable, and that's the thing that this is generalizing. I've got P instead of no there. So this is a corollary of hypothesis 3, and it's an easy corollary.
Just with that standard argument, one of the matroids is not representable and the other one is representable.
No. You take your excluded minor.
And that's the one that's not representable.
Yeah, but that's not the two matroids you look at in the proof.
Oh, okay.
You take the oh, now you're messing with my head.
You just take one element of your non-representable and you're representable, delete another element of your non-representable and now you're representable. Those are the two matrices that you're looking at, the two representable ones. But if you put both columns,
yeah. So what happens is you take your excluded minor and you get an excluded minor and a representable matrix. Then you remove some element over there, right? But now you've got two representable matroids because you've removed an element from your excluded minor. Right, so what you do is, now that's where you get the contradiction, because you can't have that. So that, yeah. All right, so now, so that's what we need with something like that. So what we get is that hypothesis 3 was about a tangle, and what we've done is to just generalise that to FK connectivity. And it's easy to see that we can generalise that to FK connectivity, because FK connected matroids have an induced tangle. And notice that having bounded rank in an FK connected matroid also gives you bounded size, because having bounded rank means there's a low order separation that's small that contains you, and all of the low order separations in an FK connected matroid have size at most F of K. So once you know that this corollary is just a straightforward consequence of hypothesis 3. And that's my last slide. So the thing about it is, what I would like to do now is to try to quickly, so I need to turn the thing off, and I'm hoping to do the rest by actually using a whiteboard and stuff like that.
Pull down and then let it go slowly.
So I deliberately, every time I go through this, I get myself muddled. So even though I've been through this a million times, in many ways, I still get myself muddled. So let's see if I can go through this all together and see if we can use the ingredients that we've talked about to prove Rota's conjecture, right? Hey, how cool is that? So, first of all, I've got my excluded minor, and it's massive. So that means from my excluded minor, I can find a really, really, really large set of elements to remove, to have the property that I can remove any subset of them that I like, and to be strongly F-Whittle K connected, right? Where K is really big. Okay, so that just means I can just choose, and that's so I'm away. And then I take, and so I'm just going to say large, and if you really care about that, you have to think about what these numbers will be, as functions, how the functions sort of soften that. But the thing is, each time I say this, I can just say I can make this as big as I like. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to partition that set X of elements. So this set X of elements, I can delete these elements. I've dualized in the process of finding this set. I can delete these elements, and then for any subset of X, I've got this relatively nice connectivity that all of the other lemmas were stated in terms of. So connectivity, cool, no problems at all. So now what I'll do is I'll remove all of these. So for each one of these, I don't know if it's a good number there, but I'll remove all of these. I'm strongly F-Whittle connected. And after removing all of those, I can find an element here that's fixed when I remove all of these and I delete this. Can anyone tell me why I can find an element there that's fixed when I remove all of these and this element here is, well, this element there becomes fixed when I remove all of that? Because in an F-Twiddle K connected, when I remove all of this lot, remember I'm strongly F-Twiddle K connected, not 334K, they're terrible, but strongly F-Twiddle K connected is a nice one to talk. Oh, there was a theorem said, oh, the set of non-fixed elements had bounded rank in any tangle. But strongly F-Twiddle K connected means bounded rank's the same as having bounded size, remember? So, and I think one. So, oh, I just happened to choose these sets to be sufficiently large that the size of them was bigger than the maximum possible size of the set of non-fixed elements, right? So that's a done deal. So I do this for all these guys.
Sorry, can I just, those elements, I mean, they were fixed beforehand, right? It's just an assertion that there exists a fixed element in each of those, right?
No, you can't lose fixedness by extension.
Yeah, that's what I was sort of wondering. So you're saying you've deleted the other sets and it is then fixed?
No, it was fixed. Oh yeah, I've deleted all of this.
Yes.
And it is still fixed. Still fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't care. I didn't even try to say whether it's fixed at the start.
Sure.
But the fact that I know it's fixed here will mean we'll see it'll be fixed in certain other matroids. But I told you it was fixed when I deleted all of these sets. Right. Now I do that for each one of these. I delete those, and now I'm going to tell you something else. So I've got this transversal. And this transversal now, it turned out there were a lot of these sets, so this transversal is pretty large. And I've got this transversal. Now, this is fixed when I delete all of these, right? Now, so these are all fixed, and not only that, they're fixed in, however I delete these things, I'm not going to be fixed. Now, what that means is when I remove the lot and I do extensions, I never get bifurcation. So any extension, if I remove the lot, I'm just extending by fixed elements, right? Now this is an excluded minor. And I delete the lot, and I do extensions by fixed elements. All right, so I've found an arbitrarily large set of fixed elements, and they're fixed when I delete each other. And I say, oh, I've got a bounded number of inequivalent representations. So what I look at is I look at n delete x1, and then I compare that with n delete x1 xn. right? And I say there was a representation of m delete x1 to xn that extended to m delete x1. Right? I remember that representation. Maybe there was more than one, but I just remember, let's say, I mean, it's better if there's more than one. So there was a representation of this that extended to that. I just remember that representation. Now I've got a lot of these, but I've only got a bounded number of inequivalent representations of m delete x1 up to xn because it's strongly F triple K connected. What a cool notion of connected. So it's strongly F triple K connected. So if I go back to that, I say, so there must be, so now I look at all of the representations of this thing, and then I say, there's only a bounded number of these, and there's a huge number of these, so there must be one representation of this that extends to a lot of these. All right, so and that's just, I think I'm good with that. I think it's called the pigeonhole principle. Actually, this is, I've actually often thought of calling the Matroid Miners project the applications of the pigeonhole principle. So now I've got some very large I, and I know that representations. Now this is a non-representable matroid, right? M is a non-representable matroid, but when I delete M, any one of any representation of M delete this stuff extends to what I get when I delete any one of these. Now I take some other element over somewhere else in the matroid, right? So I take a representation of, so now I do the same trick. I'll take a representation of m delete x1 to xi, take a matrix, chuck in all of the columns, and what I have is, I have two matroids. I mean, I have my excluded minor, so when I chuck in all of the columns, I get a representable matroid. That gives me M1. And then I have my excluded minor N, which is the non-representable matroid. But then I find another element, Z, somewhere else, and I remove it. Right now, could have been another one of these in our sort of X, and then what you say is, I remove that element Z. It was part of our set X. It's not part of this whole setup here, and it's not exactly what I want to say, but I'm just going to say it like this anyhow. I remove that, and what that does is that now, because I've removed it and I was an excluded minor, I've got two representable matroids, right? And not only that, when I remove an element from an FK connected matroid, no, it wasn't part of it. I removed an element was guaranteed to keep the difference between the two matroids. M1 and M are different matroids, and I remove some element somewhere else that's guaranteed to keep the difference. Or there will be such an element. And so I've got two different representable matroids, right? And now I might have lost connectivity. I might have lost F connectivity. But if you delete or contract an element from an F connected matroid, the worst that you can do is become 2F connected, right? You can't change, or you still be F connected for some reasonable function. That's not a difficult thing. So now what I've got is I've got two representable matroids, and I've got this set of elements here, and this set of elements has high rank in the tangle, right? Because remember we were talking about tau independence, all of that sort of stuff. So these were all, that's where this set of elements has high rank in the tangle. But hello, we have a theorem, which is the corollary of hypothesis 3. And I've now got two different matroids, M1 and M2, that are both representable. When I delete any one of these things here, I kill the difference between the two matroids because they've agreed on M delete x1 to xn, and I've done the extensions. So now I've got this large, high rank set in the tangle of elements, which have that property that if I delete any one of them, it kills the difference. And that contradicts the corollary to hypothesis 3, and Roper's conjecture is true. Voila.
Well, you kept your
promise.
Yeah, I was impressed. I could hear the bell ringing 12, even as I was saying Rota's conjecture is true.
Any questions?
No.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
If you knew that Tangle Matroids were representable, when the Tangle comes from a representable Matroid, would that make things any easier?
The thing about Tangle Matroids is, I mean, I don't think so. I mean, it's an interesting thing because I sort of got wound up with the question about the representability of Tangle Matroid. So Peter's question is an interesting one. If I give you a representable Matroid and I take the Tangle and take a Tangle in a representable Matroid, it's easily shown if I give you a Matroid representable over a finite field, it's easy to show that the Tangle Matroid is typically not representable over that same field. Because you just have easy to construct things with arbitrarily long lines in a binary tangle. It's good little exercise to give you an understanding of how things go with tangles. But the question is the Tangle Matroid representable over an extension field of that field? And we don't know. We don't know. And I don't think, like it's an interesting thing that when you come to apply the Tangle Matroid, all you care about is that you've got really nice matroidal notions like independence and rank. And but it's not just that you've got independence and rank, that combinatorially you know what it means in the Matroid to have independence. It means so it becomes a really nice compact way of saying that there's no low order separation separating you from blah or stuff like that. So I don't think it would help. Another reason it would make me think it wouldn't help is that I was working with Jim and Bert on this stuff in Wellington at one stage, and then I became mildly obsessed by the question of the representability of the Tangle Matroid. And every time I brought it up, Jim would get annoyed with me. And that meant that as far as Jim was concerned, the question of the representability of the Tangle Matroid was a red herring in terms of actually making progress to the serious problem. And so that's my main reason for thinking it wouldn't help.
Because Jim's
But
always
you're a
right.
student of Jim's, you know what it is, so you might be able to. Yeah. But actually, James had a student that worked on it. I was going to get someone to work on it, but I didn't because James was going to have a student who was working on it. So the representability of the Tangle Matroid.
I don't think you said it.
So it's no. I mean, having said that, it wouldn't help. I mean, it's a question I'd like to see answered. Yeah.
If you ask it the other way, if I tell you the Tangle Matroid is representable, or some Tangle, does that tell you anything about the representability of the Matroid? Or, like, is there any relation between the two properties? Well, that probably wouldn't help at all for this problem, just as a question.
A similar question,
Yeah, that's actually, I think it wouldn't, but I can't, yeah.
Then you could also have different tangles, so you might say, if with
Yeah.
respect to a typical tangle, if it's almost always
I
representative.
mean, what you want to do is you want to say that the Tangle Matroid is represented by an extension field for all tangles of all orders in the Matroid.
Yeah.
You know, there'd be some, that would be, I like the question, and I'd like to be able to answer it, but I'm not sure I can, yeah, it's interesting.
So what's an example of a Tangle Matroid that's not representable? Can you get a Varmush minor in a Tangle Matroid?
Well, the only way, well, see, Tangle Matroid is round.
Dennis Hall's got a characterization of Tangle Matroid.
Okay, and that includes non-representable things? I mean, it's hard to believe that, say, the non-desired is a minor of a Tangle Matroid. That would seem weird to me.
Okay, it's related to whether you can cover the thing with 3 hyperplanes.
Okay.
It's a Tangle Matroid.
Is the Fano Matroid a Tangle Matroid?
It's related to this question about whether you can cover with 3 hyperplanes. You have to decide which way around to go.
I think the Fano Matroid is the Tangle Matroid of the Fano Matroid.
Tangle Matroid is closed under the direct
Tangle
sun.
Matroids are round, right? That's what James was saying.
Tangle Matroids are all round.
Yeah. Or
Yeah, look at this paper at Dennis Hall. It's all in there.
Oh, of course they're round because they're not the union of 2 small sets.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I just don't remember what the theorem said.
But round matroids can contain, you know, all sorts of degeneracies.
But it means you can't like cheat by summing together two matroids representable over different fields. You can't build trivially non-representable matroids.
No, I don't see any obvious thing that you could. You know. I mean, if I had to say, one really nice thing about working on that problem about the representative tangle matroids is a great way for getting intuition tangles. And if you, according to James, it hasn't been settled yet. And if you could settle, and conversely, of course, if you could settle that, it's certainly a publishable result, a nice result. I'd like to see the answer to it. Actually, it would offend my sensibilities if if the tangle matroid of a representable matroid were not representable, then it offends my sensibilities because I'd have to reorder my perspective of how the universe works. And I've had to do that too many times. I don't want to do it again.
A matroid with at least two elements is a tangle matroid if and only if it cannot be covered by three hyperplanes.
Wait, that's it?
Doesn't seem very complicated.
Yes, that's the theorem. It's a nice theorem. I keep saying it's a nice theorem.
I don't think anybody has said that it's not. So, wait, say it again, if it can be covered by three hyperplanes, by
A matroid with at least two elements is a tangle matroid if and only if it cannot be covered by three hyperplanes.
I'll stop the video there.